One of the best springtime lures is a spinnerbait. It catches a lot of fish and it can catch some of the biggest bass all year long during the spring. And today I want to talk about 3 mistakes that I see a lot of anglers make with a spinnerbait in the springtime. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a good one. This video is brought to you by sportsmansoutfitters.com. If you guys are looking to buy some tackle, whether you're looking for spinnerbaits, swim jigs, top waters, jigs, any tackle that you need, it can be found at sportsmansoutfitters.com. And not only that, if you guys are on the market for a new rod, whether that's a spinnerbait rod or a different rod, you can actually get 10% off any arc fishing rod at sportsmansoutfitters.com right now. Just use the coupon code BFHQ10 and get 10% off your arc rods. Mistake number 1 when it comes to springtime spinnerbait fishing is not understanding the speed of your spinnerbait. This time of year, you hear a lot of guys talk about your blade configuration, and that is very important because depending on what water clarity you are fishing, whether that's very clear water or muddy water, you want a spinnerbait blade that's either gonna put off thump so the bass can feel it, or flash so that they can see it from a distance. But something you don't hear a lot of guys talk about is the speed at which they fish a spinnerbait. A lot of guys are gonna go out there and they're simply going to just kind of fish a spinnerbait the way that they always do. They're gonna cast it at the bank and they're just gonna reel it back at kind of that same retrieve. And something that I have found to be extremely critical to do in the springtime is fish your spinnerbait a little bit slower than normal. As we're coming out of winter, the water that you're fishing might be really cold. I mean, it might be as cold as 45, 46 degrees that you're fishing a spinnerbait, and all the way up to about 60 degrees. And what I found is that sometimes a slower spinnerbait, fishing a spinnerbait slower, can actually get you a lot more bites and a lot bigger bites. Now, whether you are fishing it up shallow, maybe around wood cover, or if you're fishing it kind of down a steeper bank and out a little bit deeper, I still like to fish it slower than I do pretty much the rest of the year. Now, something that can actually kind of help force you to slow down is by fishing a little bit lighter spinnerbait with a little bit bigger blade. For instance, here I have a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait that has a number 3 Colorado blade and a number 5 Colorado blade on it. Now, these blades are a little bit big for a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait. Usually I'm gonna use a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait a lot of times with this size of blades. But again, having a lighter spinnerbait, honestly, it forces me to slow down, because if I fish this bait too fast with that big of a blade, it will actually kind of kick the bait up in a weird way. So fishing those lighter spinnerbaits, sometimes it just forces you to slow down. So using a Colorado blade that catches a lot of water typically helps you to slow down. But if I'm fishing in really clear water in the spring with a spinnerbait, I typically like willow leaf blades. And again, I'm gonna use a smaller head. This is a 3/8 ounce head. And again, it just kind of forces me to slow that bait down. Now, this is actually one of my favorite spinnerbaits. It's a War Eagle spinnerbait, and I'll leave a link for the spinnerbaits and equipment that I talk about down below for you guys to check out. Another thing that can really kind of force you to slow down is by using a slower gear ratio reel, using something that is like a 5.2 to 1 gear ratio, or something even in the 6 range. If you guys remember when Skeet Reese won the Bassmaster Classic on the Red River, he was actually using a reel that was a 5.4 to 1 gear ratio reel, and the only reason that he did that was to force him to slow down. The next mistake that a lot of anglers make while springtime spinnerbait fishing is not getting your spinnerbait in the nastiest, thickest cover that you can. You know, if you look kind of behind me here, these are the types of places that I love to throw a spinnerbait in during the springtime. It's this thicker wood cover, these bigger logs and things like that. And here's the thing, a lot of times in the springtime, you are dealing with muddy water, or at least pretty heavily stained water. And when you have muddy water, stained water, what it typically does is really kind of makes those bass hug up against cover. You know, for a human, if you are in a room and someone turns the light off and it is pitch black, you know, sometimes what we do is kind of like to get near a wall. That allows us to kind of gauge where we are in the room. And I think Bass do the exact same thing in stained and muddy water, is they get right up against cover, whether that's logs, whether that's stumps, maybe it's even a rock bank. They're gonna get really close to that cover. So if you are fishing a spinnerbait and you are not getting it right in the cover, and I mean bouncing that thing off the cover, you may be missing out on a lot of fish, because in that stained and muddy water, those bass don't always want to shoot out and grab a bait from a distance. They're gonna stay kind of where they are, and you have to bring that bait to them. So it is so important to get that bait right up in the cover. Now, most spinnerbaits are going to come through wood cover pretty good, so you really don't have to worry about that bait getting hung up a lot. This particular spinnerbait is a Booyah Covert Series spinnerbait. It was designed by Jason Christie, who is one of the best spinnerbait bass fishermen in the world, if not the best. In my opinion, this is one of the best spinnerbaits to actually throw up in the wood cover, because it comes through it extremely well. Now, when you are fishing really tight to wood cover, I don't like to throw a trailer hook on my spinnerbait. Instead, what I'm gonna do is thread on some sort of either swim bait type trailer like this, a little boot tail plastic, or a grub. Adding that plastic to your spinnerbait actually allows that bass to kind of have something to actually suck in when they go to eat that bait. It really draws that bait into their mouth. So that's why I always put plastic on when I'm fishing around heavy wood cover, and I take that trailer hook off, because that trailer hook is going to get hung a lot. A lot of times when I am fishing tight to cover, I actually find it better to actually get kind of really close to that cover and actually pitch a spinnerbait around kind of a lot like you would a jig. And I actually like about a 7-foot rod when I'm doing this. It really allows me to make an accurate cast. This is an ARC Tharp Series hammer rod. It's 7 foot, it's medium heavy power. It's a perfect spinnerbait in my opinion. The third mistake that a lot of anglers make with a spinnerbait is not fishing painted blades. During the spring, this is one of the best seasons to fish a painted blade. Now, whether that's a little orange kicker blade like this, or a red kicker blade, or a pink kicker blade, I think that it is really important to fish these little red and orange kicker blades during the springtime. And the big reason is that bass kind of hone in on a reddish color during the spring. It is actually one of the best colors to fish. So adding a little red, a little orange, a little pink, I have seen it be the difference between catching fish and not catching fish. I was fishing a tournament with a buddy years ago, and we were using the exact same spinnerbait, same blades, except for I had an orange kicker blade on, where he just had your traditional gold Colorado blade on. During that day, I caught 6 or 7 bass on a spinnerbait, and he caught only 1 bass. Now, if you guys want to know why bass hone in so much on that reddish, orangish color so much, I actually made a video all about that right here. I'm gonna leave it linked so you guys can actually watch that and learn exactly why bass love red during the springtime. Also, don't forget to check out those links down below. Comment down below, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.